Will Tennessee continue its dominance over the ACC, or does Syracuse have a trick up its sleeve? Let's break it all down.
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into this Locked On crossover edition. I'm Jackson Holzer, the host of Locked On Syracuse. That's Eric Cain, the host of Locked On Tennessee Volunteers. And I think you know what we're going to be doing here on today's show. We're breaking down both teams, Tennessee and Syracuse, and giving our game predictions ahead of Syracuse and Tennessee, their Week 1 battle on Saturday down in Atlanta, Georgia, at noon Eastern. And before we get to everything, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. So the way this show is going to work, the beginning of this podcast, I'm going to be asking Eric all things Tennessee heading into this season. Then in segment number 2, discussing all things Syracuse heading into this season. And then to end the show, going over our game predictions. All right, so Eric, let's start off with Tennessee here. A lot of leaders on its offense from 2024, a team that was in the college football playoff a year ago, they're gone. Nico Imaliava, we don't have to get into all that saga here on today's show.
Thank you.
We all know that. But Dylan Sampson at running back, he's with the Cleveland Browns in the NFL. He was pretty good. The 3 leading wide receivers from Tennessee are gone. How does Tennessee replace those guys, and what do you expect from them in Week 1?
Yeah, it's $1 million question, right? And like Syracuse, Tennessee, I know Syracuse is dealing with the same thing, losing a quarterback, and, McCord was much more productive than Nico was, but losing a really good quarterback, losing a lot of star power on the offensive end. I'll start with quarterback, I guess. We know Nico, he left the last day of spring practice. Tennessee had to scramble. Tennessee had to find a quarterback in the spring window. Obviously, options were limited. I think Tennessee did a pretty good job, all things considered. Joey Aguilar essentially kind of doing the swap-a-roo there with UCLA, and we'll see what Aguilar is all about. His journey, 2 different high schools, junior college, Appalachian State, where he broke out, and he was a phenomenal Sun Belt player. Went back home to the West Coast, essentially UCLA, and then obviously when Nico gets there, he comes over to Tennessee. So, big play arm. Interceptions have been a thing for him in the past. Typically, Tennessee's quarterbacks under Josh Heupel don't turn the football over. We'll see if that's evident in game 1 of his career with Tennessee. But we'll see what Joey Aguilar is all about. The wide receivers, man, the wide receiver position last year wasn't very good for Tennessee. So, they've only got 7 scholarship guys in the room right now. So they're kind of a twisted ankle away from being, 1 or 2 of those from being in a pickle. And that's kind of where Tennessee was in fall camp. But still a lot of talent. Mike Matthews, Braylon Staley, Chris Brazzell comes back. He played a lot last year. Got 2 freshmen in Travis Smith, Rodarius Jackson, highly rated 4-stars that they're excited about. So I'm intrigued to see what wide receiver looks like. Running back, Tennessee's ran the football for over 2,500 yards all 4 years under Josh Heupel. He's proven that he can run the football with anybody back there. And not taking anything away from Dylan Sampson, he was phenomenal. He was the workhorse. And Tennessee brings back some experience into Deshaun Bishop, Peyton Lewis. They add Star Thomas. I think Tennessee's going to be able to run the football well. And the scheme that they do really kind of allows that. They spread people out. They create running lanes and all that. And so Tennessee's got to replace 4 starters on the offensive line. It's another question. I do think maybe not game 1, and that's good for Syracuse, but I think this offensive line will end up being better than what Tennessee had last year because I think that they're bigger, more athletic. That line last year was hurt and beat up a lot. So a lot of question marks offensively. So how does Tennessee replace all that? I don't know. It's not going to be a finished product week 1. That is for sure. But expect Tennessee to run the football. Expect Tennessee to run some 12 personnel, 2 tight ends. Tight ends are a strength for this offense. And expect Tennessee to run some tempo because typically they start the season really fast. And when they might slow down when you get into SEC play, it's still like teams like Syracuse have never seen that tempo before. So I think Tennessee will be relentless with the tempo offensively and try to use that to its advantage.
Eric, overall, what do you think the strengths of Tennessee are this season?
Defense. Easy. James Pierce, first-round pick, gone to the Atlanta Falcons. Stats-wise, wasn't as good as his 2023 season, but he was still one of the biggest disruptors in the backfield in all college football, according to Pro Football Focus stats and all that. So James Pierce is gone. Keenan Peely, starting middle linebacker, he missed half the year last year, so you've already kind of been playing without him. Lost some guys in the interior of the defensive line, but a lot of these guys that were in the rotation last year, and Tennessee plays a ton on the defensive side of the football, are back. Tennessee's going to play 12 to 13, 14 guys up front. They're going to stay fresh up front, led by Joshua Josephs, and I think they've got a number of defensive linemen, Dominic Bailey, Tyree West, Bryson Eason, that will try to be making an impact, in the trenches there. Linebacker, I think they're deep. They got a lot of young guys that have grown up. Arion Carter's kind of the leader of that group. Jeremiah Thielander, Edwin Spillman, all those guys have played football before. Then you go in the back end, and I'm sure you'll ask me this later. I'll go ahead and answer it now, I guess. All-American cornerback Jermon McCoy, they're not going to play in this game. We'll see when he gets back. Tennessee's hoping that it won't be much longer, but working off a torn ACL in beginning of January, he was training after the season was over. So that's a win for Syracuse, right? I mean, that's first-round pick. That's arguably the best corner in the nation. He's not going to be playing in this game. At least, that's the belief right now. Ricky Gibson on the other side is an experienced guy. He is he made some money last year, and this is, if he has a good year, he's going to go to the draft this year. So Ricky Gibson's a good one. Boo Carter, there's been some off-the-field issues. We'll see how much he's involved week one. He plays that nickelback, the star position. But if he's on the field, he's a game breaker. And I like this, the depth and the versatility of the Tennessee secondary. I think the Tennessee secondary, when everybody's healthy and accounted for, is going to be the strength of this unit. So to answer your question again, strength of this team, running the football offensively, but defense is going to lead the way, just as defense led the way a season ago when Tennessee made the CFP.
I was going to actually ask you about the secondary because I've been following along a little bit, and I know that Jermon McCoy, his status for Saturday's game was definitely in question. Thank you for sharing that. He's most likely not going to play against Syracuse in week one. Obviously, Syracuse fans, that's a good sign. We wish everyone full bill of health, but what? We want to win the game too. So no Jermon McCoy, that's a good sign for Syracuse football, at least passing wise. But I was going to definitely ask you about the depth of the secondary. Thank you for answering that. I want to go back to Joey Aguilar, though, the quarterback. You mentioned running the football. How much do you think Tennessee's going to utilize him in week one? Do you really think they're going to put him in harm's way, force him to make some big-time throws against Syracuse? Or do you think they might come out more conservative, try to establish that run game against Syracuse and try to bully them up front?
Well, I think they're going to try to establish the run game for sure. And I mean, Tennessee does that each and every game. I mean, the misconception about Josh Heupel's offense is it's this air raid, throw, go and show and go and all that. I mean, yeah, there's part of that, especially earlier on in 21 and 22. But man, they always run the football, and they always try to establish that run and then build off that run. So I think certainly with the new quarterback, all the questions you have offensively, Tennessee's going to rely on that run game. But they might try to ease Joey Aguilar in a little bit. But no, I think they're going to turn him loose, see what he can do, and put him in some positions to where he's got to go out there and make the play or make the right read or whatever to see kind of what they have in their starting quarterback, right? That's why you brought him here, and he's got that experience, not at the SEC level, but he's played a ton. He's played a couple of ACC schools during his time in the Sun Belt, so I think they'll try to get him comfortable for sure. But I think they're going to let it rip a little bit and see what he's got and see kind of what he can bring to the table here in week one. Especially, this is certainly not like a tune-up game or anything, but you want to see what you have in your quarterback certainly before you hit that grind of the SEC slate. And I think against Syracuse, that's a really good opportunity for him to showcase some of that.
I definitely agree with that. Is there anything on the injury report that we need to be aware of aside from Jermon McCoy?
Offensively, they've had some receivers beat up in preseason. Braylon Staley missed some time. Chris Brazzell missed some time. Mike Matthews missed some time. But I think all those guys are going to be ready to roll. We'll ask about that this week, but I think all those guys are going to be good, if not, two-thirds of them. I think they're pretty healthy on the offense. Jermon McCoy is the big one defensively. They had a defensive lineman, David Hobbs, who, former 5-star, really good player. But again, he's one of 13 up front, right? He's going to miss a couple of weeks, so he won't play in this game. But overall, I think this team is kind of where you want them to be, right? Healthy, ready to roll for the season to start. Because again, that season doesn't matter if you're in the ACC or the SEC or wherever. It's a grind, and you're going to have some bumps and bruises along the way. But it feels like Tennessee's starting off in a pretty good spot, minus Jermon McCoy. And then, of course, the Boo Carter situation, that's nothing injury related. And I think he'll be available for this game. I don't know if he's going to play 70 snaps on defense, because I think he's still working himself back into, earning the trust from the coaches, his teammates, all that and more.
Well, he's also got to get into game shape.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, right? And he probably maybe plays 50% of the time. I think that's a good target for him. I mean,
yeah, we'll see. I think he's a dynamic punt returner as well. So, maybe he returns punts and they kind of ease him in on defense a little bit. I don't know. We'll have to ask Josh Heupel this week. We've tried to keep tabs on that every week in spring ball, and he hasn't really given us an answer. But if he's out there, that's a good point. If he's out there, he is a dynamic punt returner. So, I would be game planning special teams wise to not give him a chance to return a punt if he's back there.
Well, what's unfortunate about Syracuse is that last year I think they had the worst special teams in the ACC, if not the country. So they got a new special teams coordinator this year. Hopefully they are a lot better and they can slow down Boo Carter, assuming that he is on the field. Eric, is there anything else you'd like to add about the Tennessee Volunteers for 2025?
I think this is a good football team. I know there's a lot of questions. I know there's a lot of pessimism from the national media, and I get it. You lose James Pierce, Dylan Sampson, Nico Saga. I understand it. This is a really good roster. It's open season, right? I think that Tennessee can be pretty solid. I think Tennessee, I think the floor, in my opinion, is like an 8-4 season. I think this is a good roster. So, say stay healthy, quarterback hits, who knows? This team could be contending once again for a college football playoff spot. So I'm excited to see what they look like. Obviously, a pretty good test coming off a 10-win campaign in Syracuse a season ago for that season opener in Atlanta.
And speaking of Syracuse, coming up, a Syracuse overview for week 1 against Tennessee and for 2025. Stick with us here on this Locked On crossover edition. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast, on average, in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege and use promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. We have an important request. Locked On wants to hear from you. That's right. We've put together a survey to learn more about our listeners and make your favorite podcasts even better. This is your chance to tell us what you like, what you don't, and answer questions about our advertising. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey to get started. Everyone who completes a survey will be entered for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Amazon gift cards. Again, that's lockedonpodcast.com/survey. You can also find the link in the show notes. Thanks for helping us out.
Hey, welcome back into your Monday morning Locked On crossover. I am Eric Cain with Locked On Vols. That is Jackson Holzer from Locked On Syracuse. Tennessee and Syracuse getting the season underway. Saturday, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, Atlanta, Georgia, neutral site game. Tennessee coming off a 10-3 season, and it was Syracuse coming off a 10-3 season as well. 5-3 in the ACC. Real quick before we get into all the departures and how different this looks. I mean, Syracuse last year, great season, played spoiler, not Miami out of the college football playoff, had a record-setting quarterback in Kyle McCord, and, Fran Brown, really, really good coach. Of course, he spent a long time, or a couple of seasons with Georgia. Obviously, I think that he's a bright head coach in the making, if you will. I think he's got his work cut out for him a little bit, just replacing all of the star power that left. But I like what Syracuse did last year, especially towards the end of the season, and you hope that some of that makeup and some of that depth can carry over into the 2025 season.
Yeah, of course. This is a big prove-it season for Syracuse. Last year was awesome. Fran Brown was able to keep a lot of the talent that was already remaining. And of course, the big one, getting Kyle McCord at quarterback. And look, I thought he was going to be better than a lot of people thought. I actually predicted him before the season to be second team All-ACC. Lo and behold, That's where he finished. He was right behind Cam Ward, who was first team All ACC and, of course, number 1 pick in the NFL draft. That being said, I did not expect him to set ACC records. I did not expect him to break records that were held by Clemson's, Deshaun Watson, and all the other previous great quarterbacks in the ACC. He really only had, in 13 starts, he had 1 bad game. Every other game, he was at least average to above average, and most of the time, he was the best player on the field, regardless of the team. How Syracuse replaces him? Well, Steve Angeli. Quarterback competition, just like Tennessee had this summer, right? Both teams had a quarterback competition. Steve Angeli had to beat out Ricky Collins, a transfer from LSU, and we'll see how he does in week 1 against Tennessee, making his first career regular season start. He has made 1 start before, but that was the 2023 Sun Bowl for Notre Dame. First career regular season start, week 1 against Tennessee.
You know, I'm sorry to cut you off. I was going to say the diehard fans for Tennessee know exactly who Steve Angeli is, right? He was one of those guys in the transfer portal when Tennessee needed a quarterback. So a lot of fans, myself included, saw Steve Angeli. Who is this guy? Okay, this, that, he did this, he did that. So I'm pretty familiar with Steve Angeli. My question for you is, what did he do to win the job coming in summer when, correct me if I'm wrong, Ricky Collins was here for spring ball? Like, why? Ricky Collins had the upper hand. How did Steve Angeli win this job?
That's a great question. Number 1, I think he showcased leadership. Fran Brown was saying repeatedly throughout the offseason that he was looking for a quarterback who is not only just the best on the field, right? It's not only about having the best arm or the best legs or being the most accurate, but also it's the intangibles and it's the mind. And look, yes, he got here over the spring. But once he's able to learn that playbook, once he's able to develop chemistry, it really comes down to, okay, who gravitates to whom, right? And it seemed like the players gravitated more towards Steve Angeli. He also has more experience. It's not a lot of experience, but he does have 1 career start. He did make that cameo appearance in the college football playoff. So as I once told our fans here on Locked On Syracuse, look, if Steve Angeli has a bad day at practice, you can go turn on the game tape and see, well, maybe that was just a bad day for him at practice, because look what he did against Penn State in the playoff. Look what he did in the Sun Bowl against Oregon State and all the times that he had to fill in for Notre Dame. Now, if Ricky Collins has a bad day at practice, what's the tape? He's got 7 career passes at LSU, none of them really coming in any high leverage situations. So at the end of the day, once Steve Angeli is able to pick up that playbook and develop chemistry, it simply came down to who had the better leadership, who was able to get the guys to gravitate more towards him, and ultimately, who gives Syracuse the best chance to win in week 1 against Tennessee.
So you got your quarterback settled, all right? We know a little bit about Steve Angeli, but Syracuse lost its leading receiver, and he was a great one. 9 touchdowns, almost 1,000 yards. He left in the spring portal, if I'm not mistaken. I'm blanking on his name. What was his name?
Trevor Pena.
Yeah, Trevor Pena. You're losing him. You're losing your tight end that was pretty productive as well, almost 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns. Losing a 1,000-yard rusher, 16 touchdowns. Also a really good receiver out of the backfield, 64 receptions. Lost 3 transfers on the offensive line to the portal. How do you replace all that on offense? And again, I know we're just talking about for Tennessee as well. Tennessee doing the same thing, but how do you replace all that production? Because it's a lot of production.
That's the million-dollar question, because with all due respect to Syracuse, Syracuse is still a program that's trying to get to that next tier. They're trying to be able to stack multiple great seasons in a row, because 2018, they also won 10 games. But we don't need to talk about what happened in 2019. And then we definitely don't need to talk about what happened in 2020. With Tennessee, they lose guys, but then they replenish. They lose guys, they replenish. It's the same. That's what's called a really good program, right? And I'm not just saying that because you're the host of Locked On Vols. You can go look at the track record of Josh Heupel. Every single year, Tennessee seems to have a really, really good team. Syracuse trying to get there. So how are they replacing those guys? Well, we already talked about quarterback. You got Steve Angeli. Tight end is a little bit more concerning. They're going with Dan Villari, who is a veteran. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife. He used to play quarterback over at Michigan. He transferred a few years ago to Syracuse. He can run. He can catch a little bit. He can block a little bit. Is he better than Oronde Gadsden? Absolutely not. Sorry, Dan Villari. love you. You're not better than Oronde Gadsden, who's currently in the NFL with the Chargers. At wide receiver, I think they're going to be okay. Yes, they lost Trevor Pena. The guy replacing him, though, is a former 5-star recruit in 2023. His name, you might be familiar with him because he played in the SEC last year, Jonte Cook from Texas. Jonte Cook, he's got an interesting past, to say the least. But maybe Syracuse giving him a shot as the starting slot receiver, maybe that's exactly what he needs. So I would not be surprised if he went out and he had a big season for Syracuse and was able to replace the production that Trevor Pena gave Syracuse last year. As far as on the outside, Jackson Meeks, great player. He might make the Lions' 53-man roster as an undrafted free agent because he has had a terrific preseason over there. But in comes Darryl Gill. Darryl Gill last year was the 5th option on the Syracuse offense, and yet he was still able to carve out a pretty nice role, 500 yards at wide receiver as a 5th option.
Yeah.
That tells you that when you get on the field, you are very, very productive, and it also shows that maybe he can step in and be a wide receiver number 1 for Syracuse. So you got Darryl Gill, you got Jonte Cook. I almost said Trevor Pena again. Apologies on that one. And then there's this guy named Justice Ross Simmons. Justice Ross Simmons a couple of years ago was a transfer from Colorado State. He had a great year over there, high expectations heading into 2024 for him, but unfortunately he dealt with injuries. And then it was almost like a Wally Pipp situation because by the time he got healthy, too many players on the depth chart had surpassed him already.
Yeah.
Now, clean bill of health, seems like he's good to go. He's already said on record that his goal this season is 1,000 yards. I do think that's a little bit ambitious, but you know what? You might as well set your goals high. So when you have a guy like Justice Ross Simmons and Darryl Gill and Jonte Cook, I do think they're going to be okay at wide receiver, even though they are missing a lot of great players from last year.
Quick question. We're Tennessee, a lot of questions on the offensive end, but I showed my work. I think Tennessee's defense is going to be really good. I do, even though they lost some. Syracuse didn't really have a defense to hang its hat on last year. I mean, it was fine, but the offense was so explosive, was so good. I think the 29 points per game, that was 14th in the ACC, allowed over 150 yards per game, 5.2 yards per carry. So the defense wasn't fantastic, but it didn't have to be fantastic last year. Where's the defense for Syracuse going to look like in 2025?
We're all hoping it's going to be a lot better than it was last year.
Okay.
And also the thing with last year was Syracuse was mostly a pass-first team, and yet they held the ball more than any other team really in the country. Their time of possession numbers were off the charts. It really doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense, right? You throw the ball, you got incompletions. Next thing you know, you're giving the ball to the other team. You're not going to possess the ball a lot. That was not the case with Syracuse last year. They passed first, and they controlled the clock in most games, so their defense wasn't on the field all that much. What gives me a little bit of hope for Syracuse is that last year, I think their big weakness was just tackling. They were one of the worst tackling teams in the ACC, according to Pro Football Focus. Can they be at least middle of the pack this year? Because if they're middle of the pack this year, then all of a sudden those 25-yard plays that would happen against Syracuse last year, all of a sudden they become 10-yard plays. And it gets a little bit easier for Syracuse to defend. Make the opponent march down the field against you. Don't let them complete 50-yard plays because you couldn't make a tackle for 5 yards. I bring up a constant example of last year against Georgia Tech with our linebacker, Derek McDonald, who is returning this season. He's got Haynes King in the first quarter dead to rights. It's going to be like a negative 8-yard play, 8-yard loss. All right. He's got him. He doesn't make the play. It becomes a 20-yard touchdown. That's something that can be fixed. You just you're in position, make the play. With Tennessee, I see examples of that too from last year. As far as I was actually, because I don't want this to happen, I was watching a little bit of NC State against them last year.
Yeah.
One of those first drives of the game for Tennessee, it's like a 3rd and 14, if I remember correctly. He's got him. Tennessee, the NC State linebackers got him. It's going to be 4th and 4 or whatever. I remember the play was in the first quarter. Forgive me. I'm not going to name the exact time and distance and everything because I don't remember everything. But I just remember watching that play. Next thing you know, I think it was Dylan Sampson with the ball. He kind of like zigzags a little bit, and then he gets the first down.
Yeah.
If you're Syracuse, make the play and you force Tennessee to kick the field goal instead of eventually scoring a touchdown.
Yeah, Dylan Sampson did a little bit of that a lot last year. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, he's a great player, but at the end of the day, if he's in front of you, I don't care that he's going to the NFL. You're a Division I linebacker. Make the tackle. That's all we're asking for. We're not sitting here saying you got to bottle up, Tennessee's running back to no gain every single time. It's when you're in position to make the play, make the play.
So I think there's some parallels here, Tennessee offensively to where Syracuse is offensively, where I think their difference is, I think Tennessee's defense, more experience, obviously, than that of Syracuse, and a little bit better results from those returners. But we will get to the game predictions, how Jackson feel this game is going to go for Tennessee and Syracuse, and the season opener coming up next right here as we cross it over. Locked On Vols and Locked On Syracuse. Hey guys, I want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook. August the 26th, it's coming up. It's tomorrow, right? It's Tuesday, August 26th. Officially, it's FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for the bowl predictions and the preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel's giving you deals on the NFL season predictions, so whether you're going to call the MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or if you want to check out and call your Super Bowl champion before the season even kicks off, this is the place for you right now. This is your moment. You can take a flyer on an MVP. You can take, look at those odds over there at FanDuel Sportsbook and just try something out. I mean, it's Tuesday is the Futures Day. It's only one day as well, so you better make it count. You better take advantage. How do you take advantage? How do you make it count? Well, visit FanDuel.com today or check out the FanDuel Sportsbook app today. Start planning your future bets right now because Future Day, again, it's just one day. It's tomorrow. It is August the 26th. Make it count. FanDuel, where you can play your game.
We've heard about Tennessee. We've heard about Syracuse. Let's get into the game prediction for next Saturday at noon Eastern down in Atlanta, Georgia. Syracuse taking on the Tennessee Volunteers. Eric, I'll start with you. And instead of the traditional, what's your game pick? What's your score prediction? We'll do a little bit of fill in the blank game, okay?
Okay.
Tennessee wins this game if
Tennessee wins this game if it wins the run game. Tennessee, has over, as a team, 150 yards. Tennessee's got a very good record in that regard. If Tennessee's going to share the ball a little bit, not Dylan Sampson anymore, Deshaun Bishop, Peyton Lewis, Star Thomas. But if Tennessee wins the ground game, I think Tennessee's going to win this game. So if Tennessee wins the battle of the rushing, then I think Tennessee's going to win this game.
Interesting that you said that, because I think Tennessee wins if they can establish the pass game, because I think Syracuse is going to do everything in their power to try to slow down the Tennessee run game. And don't get me wrong, Tennessee might be able to just run up and down the field on Syracuse. I would not be surprised, and your analysis is spot on with that. But let's say Syracuse, they are able to manage the run game. They hold down Tennessee just a little bit. If Joey Aguilar comes out slinging, and he goes for 300 yards, completes 65% of his passes, limits his turnovers, Syracuse doesn't have a chance. They're just not going to beat Tennessee because eventually if they can get their pass game going, they're going to be able to run the ball too as well.
Yeah, and again, I haven't, I've watched some tape on Joey Aguilar, but I've not covered him. I haven't watched all of his games. So again, like a lot of this, just like with everybody else, I'm just intrigued to see how he goes out there. I'm intrigued to see how he handles adversity. I'm intrigued to see how he handles blitz picks-ups and different looks in the back end and all that, to see how, he audibles off that, or he checks away from that, or he goes right into it. I don't know. I'm pumped to see how he does. And because I agree with you, man, if he goes out there and starts humming and he does what he did at Appalachian State, and again, he did this against some ACC schools. Again, he played a Sun Belt conference, but they played some non-conference games. He's capable of doing that, man. I think it's game over with everything that Tennessee has with that defense and that run game. But I'm intrigued to see what that looks like as well. For Tennessee, I guess for Syracuse, rather, if Tennessee has to throw the football to beat Syracuse, what does Syracuse need to do to beat Tennessee?
I think that Syracuse on offense has to limit turnovers as much as possible. Early last week, I did a podcast talking about recent ACC over SEC upsets, and there really aren't a lot of them. A lot of times when the ACC does beat the SEC, they were either favored or they were two really, really good teams, right? But one thing that each upset has in common is that the ACC team limited turnovers. It's not necessarily about forcing a ton of turnovers on Tennessee, but if Syracuse doesn't make any big mistakes on offense, they're going to give themselves a chance to win this game. Now, I flip it over to the defense. You got to make one big play. Maybe you got to get a defensive touchdown. Maybe it comes on special teams. Maybe you get like a kick return touchdown, a punt return touchdown, something. Think about it this way, Syracuse fans and Tennessee fans. This is good information for you as well. When the Orange beat Miami last year at home, there was one play that I thought more than any other play completely changed that game. And it was Devin Grant forcing a fumble on Xavier Restrepo after he had already picked up a first down. And then Devin Grant takes it all the way for a fumble return touchdown. I think Syracuse, in order to win this game against Tennessee, they are going to have to make one of those big-time plays that it becomes a 10-point swing, a 14-point swing, something like that. If you go check FanDuel right now, Tennessee is a 13.5-point favorite. If you get a pick six, that 13.5-point favorite, it goes away because right there, it's a 14-point swing in favor of Syracuse. So you got to limit turnovers as much as possible. And on defense, all we're asking for is one big play.
Yeah, that line over at FanDuel Sportsbook, 13.5 in favor of the Volunteers. The total at 50.5 over at FanDuel Sportsbook. I think Tennessee defensively, I'll give my defensive take, and then we can get into game predictions officially. I think Tennessee's got to be great on third down. Tennessee was one of the best third down defenses in all the country last year. I think Tennessee is one of the best red zone defenses as well. So, I mean, you can move the ball, that's fine. But, you know, when you get down to the red zone, you know, bow up a little bit. And Tennessee did a great job in that regard. And, again, you know, Tennessee was really, really good on third down. So I think if you handle those two aspects, you're going to be in good shape. But more than anything, like on offense, establish run, defense, do what Tennessee does best. Shut down that run. Put the game in the hands of Steve Angeli. Make him go win it. You know, again, he's got a little bit of experience. He's played in the college football playoff. He's been on good teams before, but he's never been the guy. You know, week one, game one, the entire country's watching you, right? You're playing a good team in Tennessee. It's a neutral site field, but Tennessee fans are going to there's going to be more Tennessee Orange than Syracuse for sure because Tennessee fans travel, but obviously it's just a few hours away. Put the game in the hands of Steve Angeli. You know, what are you going to do? Is the veteran Tennessee defense going to win that battle, or is Angeli going to shock some people? I say put the game in his hands if you're the Tennessee defense and, you know, see where the cards fall. I think you like your chances if you're the Tennessee defense in that regard, just based on, you know, the history of what you've done and you know, a relatively – I'm not going to call him a rookie because he's been there, done that, but a rookie in a starting role.
I'm smirking a little bit, but it's because I think Syracuse is going to do exactly that.
Yeah.
I think they're going to put the ball in Steve Angeli's hands and say, go win the game. I don't think they're going to come out here because I'm just going based on last year. And last year they were a pass first team. They put the ball in Kyle McCord's hands and said, all right, man, take us to the promised land. Make all the right reads, make the right decisions, deliver the ball on time and accurately. They are probably going to do the same thing with Steve Angeli. They're not the same quarterback exactly, but I don't think Syracuse all of a sudden is going to completely change its system. In fact, they're not changing their system. Fran Brown confirmed it at ACC Media Day. Same system. They're going to do the same thing. So, Eric, you're saying, hey, Tennessee, force Syracuse to beat you with the pass game. I think that's exactly what Syracuse is going to try to do anyway. I don't think
it should play into the hands. I mean,
Yeah.
You should feel good about that if you're Tennessee because, again, you know, even though McCoy's not out there, we'll see where Boo Carter is. You still like your secondary a lot, and so you got faith in that back end of the defense and that defensive line to go put pressure on them. So it should be a good game, no doubt. Jackson, what do you like about this game? What are your thoughts going into this game? What is your score prediction? And I'll say this: it's the beginning of the week, so you and I can both change this later on in the week. But give me your score prediction here on a Monday.
Oh goodness, you're putting me on the spot here. All right. Syracuse fans, please don't be mad at me. I'm nervous. Okay. I think Syracuse is going to cover, but I think Tennessee wins this game. What I'm hoping for is that it's a one-score game in the fourth quarter. If it's a one-score game in either direction in the fourth quarter, anything's possible. And make Tennessee maybe sweat a little bit. Make them sweat a little. Make them think. Plant that seed of doubt in their mind. It's kind of like in basketball and March Madness when you're in the first or second round and you got that high seed versus the low seed, and all of a sudden it's kind of a close game towards the end of the second half, who do you think that tends to favor? It tends to favor the team that's going for the upset. There's a little bit less pressure on them. So if you're Syracuse, keep it as close as possible in the fourth quarter. But ultimately, I do think Tennessee makes that extra play. Steve Angeli, with a few minutes to go, he throws that interception, a killer backbreaker. Tennessee goes down the field. They score that insurance touchdown, and they get the win over Syracuse 31-20.
31-20. All right. So for me, it's weird, man, because again, Syracuse had a great year last year. I told you I like Fran Brown a lot. I like the pieces last year, but those pieces are gone. And I've talked about the defense where it's similar with Tennessee, but you can kind of hang your hat still on the defense. Can't necessarily do that with Syracuse, okay? I still think Tennessee's roster is really, really good. And I think a lot of that's just kind of the nature of, you got one of the better teams in the SEC against, a team from the ACC, year over year over year. So I'm going to pick Tennessee to win this game. I think Tennessee will cover. I think Tennessee wins by, give me, I'll call it a 14, a clean 14, 2 touchdowns. Give me 28-14. Give me 28-14 Tennessee, which, is not a very high scoring game, right? But I do think that there's going to be some sloppiness. It's week 1. Both teams are trying to figure it out offensively for sure. I think there will be some missed tackles because there's always missed tackles in week 1. Hopefully it won't be as sloppy as the start of that game in Ireland a couple of days ago. But
boy.
I think as the game goes along, Tennessee will rely on that experience and, especially running the football. And I think backed by more Tennessee Orange than Syracuse Orange, I think Tennessee is going to be able to run itself to a win here.
Eric, before we go, I need to ask you a question here. I'm not expecting you to know the answer. Last year, Syracuse opened the season against Ohio. Guess how many missed tackles they had, according to Pro Football Focus?
Let's say 17.
Close. 19.
Okay.
Wait, you know what happened the following week when they played a better opponent in Georgia Tech?
What?
6 missed tackles.
Okay.
That's week 1 for you.
Yeah.
Weird stuff can happen in week 1. And if you're Syracuse with all that weird stuff, you got to take advantage of the weird stuff. If a ball is on the ground, you got to pick it up. It's as simple as that. That is how Syracuse can potentially upset Tennessee. And if you're Tennessee, take care of the football. You take care of the football, you should be able to run up and down Syracuse's throat, make enough plays on defense, and Tennessee should be able to walk away with a nice, clean victory over Syracuse. Folks, thank you so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. This has been a Locked On crossover edition, Locked On Syracuse, Locked On Vols. You can check us out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Folks, feel free to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It helps both our channels grow to reach all of our amazing fan bases. And hopefully we can reconnect next week following a Syracuse upset. Apologies. It's a crossover edition after a wonderful, wonderful game. Take care, everyone.